Okay, it looks like we have what is approaching a full raft. About 25 people in the main chat. We were just doing some painting behind the scenes. I was testing out some of the members only features, so if you're a member, you probably got that notification. You didn't miss anything that critical. Mostly a test. It's a good week. It's a good day, in fact. MK Ultra is trending on Twitter. And this is a very important topic because we have another shooter. But it's not a right-wing bowl cut. It's a left-wing alleged trans shooter. These are both fake constructs. They couldn't get the right wing to care about mass shootings, so they started going after country music concerts. And then they made a new type of shooter that's not on their side because they see, oh, Nick Cruz, MAGA hat, he's on ours. And they kind of minimize it. But now they've constructed these new shooters who are Redditors and leftists. Audrey Hale's manifesto leaked, and I think she had a point of view that was critical of like white privilege, for example. So as you'll see, there's a lot of narrative attached to this latest fake shooting. And one indication here that the whole thing is fake is that it's got 50 different spin-off political football narratives conveniently timed for the election to bring up certain talking points right before the debate between Trump and Harris. So I don't lead with this might be the real one. No. This has all the hallmarks of fakery. As we can go through, there are videos that just tell the story. It's predictable. We have a lot of gleeful actors on the scene. But one of the narratives that you always hear is that, oh, this was caused by antidepressants. Like it's this cliche now that anybody on the right wing is automatically going to look for second shooters during assassinations, and they're always going to blame psychiatry, SSRIs. They're going to blame antidepressants and mental illness for mass shooters. And they're playing into the broader narrative that's actually bipartisan, because what they're trying to do is convince people that there's a certain segment of society that are susceptible to mind viruses and will go violent if we don't censor our own minds and our own speech for the benefit of those who can't filter out bad mind viruses. And this individual has already been described as very online, went to Discord. So there's quite a lot attached to this one. We're just getting started, but MK Ultra is trending because they will attach MK Ultra to all of these events. And here's the problem with it. Left wing says the event was real, caused by gun culture. Got to get rid of the Second Amendment. Right wing says the event was real, caused by SSRIs. We got to do something about mental illness. So you see, neither side disagrees about whether it actually happened. They just disagree on what it means. And that's how they control these conversations around PSYOPs. They never let anybody go into the realm of, did it even happen? Here's a couple of tweets about it. I'm looking at the trending topic, MK Ultra. MK Ultra shooter James Holmes, 2012, Aurora, Colorado. His father, Robert Holmes, had ties to DARPA, Salk Institute, mind control therapist, brainwave manipulation experiments. They give you all these nice little rabbit trails to follow. Like you can find one that connects James Holmes's father to Adam Lanza's father. And this recent shooter, which we'll get into in a minute, was apparently using the name Adam Lanza. Might have been in a different language, but it had a variant of Lanza as their Discord name. And they openly idolized Nick Cruz and had been under the scrutiny of the FBI. So think about it, Lanza, Cruz. You're looking at two other fictional characters. And that's because all of these mass shooters exist in a fictional universe. It's like the Marvel universe. Like we all know that superheroes don't exist. But the Marvel universe is a body of comics and movies and content and video games where it's the real world, but you also have these additional characters and they all reference each other. You have many different authors and writers who all create content for the same fictional universe, and as long as they obey the rules, these stories don't contradict one another. They can all coexist. And similarly, all of the fake events take place in a fictional universe. So you have all these names like Lanza and Cruz, Patrick Crusius and Audrey Hale, who's one of my favorite mass shooters so far. And I say that knowing that these things are all fake. These are constructs. But this is the most interesting one because Audrey Hale represented the curveball. This is where they figured it out. We can't get the right wing agitated about mass shooters, so let's construct one that perfectly epitomizes everything they're afraid of. And they've pulled it off masterfully because now suddenly that's all the right wing talks about. From the very top, you got people like Jack Pizzagate, Jack Posobiec, who started Pizzagate, who's been hyping up the Audrey Hale story, and they try to turn that Covenant mass school shooting into like a right-wing Sandy Hook event. But we'll get into that. MK Ultra is trending. And I remember last week we talked about how Al Roker had an MK Ultra glitch and he froze on TV. Everyone has seen this. Like, I'd like this image on a coffee mug. It's just iconic. Well, there's a similar one. It happened to Shaquille O'Neal. He had a massive MK Ultra glitch on television. So I don't know why MK Ultra is trending. Is it because Shaq had a glitch, or because the shooter is alleged to be an MK Ultra assassin? But let me go ahead and play this clip.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's that?
That could only be the musical stylings of Victor Oladipo, who is the reigning two-time champion of the All-Star Weekend player.
Now, Shaq is on the far left here. He's not just not moving, like he's not just still reading a cue card. No, he's not even, his pulse has stopped. Like there's nothing moving here. He almost looks like a CGI inserted, just two-dimensional character, just a single frame. Like he could be fake here. He's just not moving.
Talent show.
You are talented. I give you a little credit on that. A lot of credit. You're very talented. I mean, you're not a karaoke guy like me, but you can actually.
You know,
No one else seems to notice that Shaq just kind of turned off over here. But yeah, that might be the reason why MK Ultra is trending. I got to figure it out. Commenters say he looks like he's having a stroke. Nick says Shaq is such a goofball. That's just who he is. Isn't this when he shows off his 33rd degree Mason ring? Everybody knows he's just trolling. Now, is he trolling? You know, is he trolling right now for clicks? Does he know that he's got a built-in group of people who are going to immediately say this is MK Ultra? He could be trolling, now that I think about it. Although, I have another article featuring Shaq. It just came out where apparently he lost $20 million because of Flat Earth. If you remember, he kind of lent a little bit of credence to the theory. He suggested that they had a point. Here, Shaquille O'Neal lost $20 million due to Flat Earth ideology as NBA Giant spills the beans on Giant conspiracy. Yeah, he lost a big contract, took a huge hit. Says the Earth is flat. Yeah, it is. With those words, he made it to the Flat Earth community in 2017. In a recent episode of Goat Talk. Now, Goat Talk, is that the one where Channing Tatum said to the Flat Earthers, F off? I mean, the vitriol. He said, I said Earth was flat one time, and I lost a big deal on that, like $20 million, he said in a recent interview. He added he received 500,000 hate mails from his fans. I'm not going to elaborate on that, he finished. He was a firm believer that the Earth is flat. Quote, yes, it is. Listen, there are 3 ways to manipulate the mind: what you read, what you see, and what you hear. He gave an example of how driving from Florida to California made him feel like it was a straight line and not round. There's a great twist to the story. Let's see. Yeah, he felt by traveling by plane. Yeah, I remember he was talking about this. I don't know if he was serious or not. A lot of people are questioning whether he was serious. I'm pretty sure that he might have been trolling. But he lost $20 million just for saying the F-bomb. Joined by P. Trippa, Diana South, Let's Go, at Matt XHLG, Deprogram Truther, LAC, Maggart4822, Lean Dion, Plain Decoded, thank you for joining. Jessica Lynn says, here waiting for Garrow to come on. He always has something interesting to say. I mean, he comes on the other day, we're talking about Rosie O'Donnell and how Trump called her an ugly pig, just nasty. He's just really cruel to her on the world stage at this big debate with Megyn Kelly in 2016. And it seemed like she was hitting back by saying that he wasn't really shot. And that went pretty viral. And then he calls in to talk about her name, the significance, of course, Rosie O'Donnell, Rose, as in Rose from the dead. And as we got into the conversation, it kind of seemed like, well, this is probably contrived, because she said the shooting looked hinky. Now, I don't know what the hell hinky is, or I didn't know. I was like, what the heck is a hinky? Well, hinky is another word to mean like hoaxy. But it was interesting because there are so many connections, narrative connections, script links between the Trump assassination attempt and the Reagan assassination attempt by John Hinckley. So the Hinckley connection. And this is just something that indicates that it's some kind of an inside joke, because these are all equally fake. It's the same production company. In fact, I had a comment from coin researcher Ant. He said, they all come together because government, media, academia are all controlled by the hidden supreme families. Great connections by Jessica and JL on John Hinckley being Hinky. The Oasis singer also was born on 5/29. That's why their reforming is a big frenzy. Starts July 4th, 2025. Thanks for that comment. Okay, moving on here. Joined by Flozik, Slick Rick 333, Elephant Tusks. Says, are they going to go for trans LGBT rights or take the guns away, or both? Interesting question. And there's another element to this as well, because there seems to be a Synchromorpheus picked out some interesting code. Like, they're throwing in some things. Like, I've noticed for some time they put out truther bait. Like, oh, this is the shooter, and they get a lot of people to run with it. Oh, this guy's it. And then you find out that it's not it. But they let the fake shooter go out there, and it's not always like Matt Hyde. It's not just some troll. They put out fake leads. And they make it known, hey, you got to wait for the authoritative source to tell you what's what, because these truthers just jump at anything. And unfortunately, that's true. They take the bait every single time. So when I'm shown an image, oh, this is the shooter. Like when it came to the guy that shot Trump, you had someone who looked vaguely like the shooter claiming it was him. And then we had this Italian, I don't know what he was, an Antifa. And I even spread that rumor on the day. And his name was something like Violet or something. So it makes sense to wait, just to recognize that you don't have enough information to say something is real or something is fake. You actually don't have enough information at the very first headline that you read. And that's the mistake. People decide to believe upon reading a headline that fits their cognitive bias. And that's why they've changed their tack when it comes to the demographics that the shooters come from. They want to make it look like, oh, this demographic is a threat to your family in every way, and now they're shooting up children in Christian schools. And this was, if you recall, when Audrey Hale shot up Covenant, it was against the backdrop of Target having a clothing line with rainbows on it, which was offensive to the far-right MAGA groups who were protesting it. And then they find out that Target had actually recruited an artist who is known for doing satanic images, like Baphomet. So, it's kind of hard to, say that the right-wingers are stretching when we're reaching for it, when they're saying that there's some kind of satanic element. But I'm saying it's contrived. It's part of the scripting, because the right wing is targeted with this new moral panic and satanic panic. In fact, I mentioned Jack Posobiec because he's the one who really highlighted Audrey Hale. And he said, we need a new satanic panic. And I find this whole thing very interesting because Audrey Hale was the first to take this really, well, even before Audrey Hale, Robert Crimo was kind of, he was the one who shot at the 4th of July parade. And even with that one, there were some interesting elements to it because he was wearing a dress when he did the shooting, and they pointed this out. But what ties them together is Robert Crimo and Audrey Hale are both mass shooters that seem to be events targeting the right wing, like targeting a 4th of July parade or the Christian school. But in both these instances, these are shooters that have parallels in the Netflix series Stranger Things. Stranger Things had the Uvalde connection as well. So you have the Uvalde school shooting happening, and then they put a warning on season 4 of Stranger Things. Oh, this is like what just happened in the news. So you may want to be careful watching this because the first episode's a bunch of dead kids. So they don't show you anything in the news, but they show it to you in the movies, and then you put it together if you're properly programmed. And this is not an anomaly. I mean, more recently, we saw HBO change the title of season 4, episode 8 of The Boys, Assassination Run, because the episode had so many eerie coincidental parallels with Donald Trump. Okay, joined by Buzz Dean, says, good to catch a live. Yeah, just make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter. Okay, let's see. Rumor mill says Klaus Schwab will be known. America will experience... What is this one? I'd like to know more about that. Klaus Schwab is very 2020. Haven't heard that name in a little while. AngstG says, is MK Ultra glitch triggered by a word or a phrase? Like mad love, or could it just be pissed on breadcrumbs? Yeah, I don't believe MK Ultra is this thing where they program somebody and now they can just use a code word, kind of like the Manchurian Candidate. And if you remember, the Manchurian Candidate was a programmed assassin who got a phone call. And after he received the phone call and received the code like phrase, he went out and he shoots the president. That was produced by Frank Sinatra, who also did another one called, I think it was called Suddenly. And both these Frank Sinatra films were said to be inspiration for the shooting of JFK, that Oswald was inspired by these. So the movie Suddenly has to do with an assassination, 1954, and then Manchurian Candidate. So you can also note that predictive programming has always been a part of mass media. They've always been synchronizing entertainment with future news events. But this MK Ultra mind-controlled assassin narrative is ancient. And I'm saying it's a hoax. That these individuals aren't mind-controlled and they have handlers, but they may be actors and have directors. That they're not programmed, but they are given scripts. So they're not programmed on the level of being without agency, but they're programmed as though they're just, operatives, order followers, like soldiers. Ted Stryker says, Shaq always has inflammation, but he does have car insurance. Right. Esteban says, penguin shirt with the word hoax on it. I'll make a note because we are trying to open up a store. Yeah, Jessica Lynn, good. I'm glad you brought this up. Trump admits he lost the election by a whisker. Yeah, Trump really screwed up. He admitted he lost by a whisker. And that may just convict him. That might just throw away all their hard legal work keeping him out of jail. He just had to shoot himself in the foot right here, so close to the finish line. Joined by Starboy Devoid from Twitch. Thanks for joining. Okay, we have about 100 people in chat so far. Oh, Jessica Lynn says, right after the Covenant School shooting got shot up across the country, there was a day of trans visibility. Yeah, there was also this scheduled Trans Day of Rage. And they canceled it because of the shooting. And I actually called this out, just to bring this up. We were looking at this metascript, how 1968 to 1973 have been superimposed over about 2020 to now. And it's 2 a day. Like the anniversary of the Apollo launch, you had Bezos launching. You had a commensurate massacre in California. The whole, it was the QAnon guy who stabbed his kid 17 times. That happened on the anniversary of the Manson killings. But we were just noticing certain trends. And this is at the time the media was calling Q a modern hippie movement. But how it was just, like how it had all these similarities. But we were just noticing trends, patterns. Like the riots of 2020 had a lot of rhetoric that was just cherry-picked from 68. Like Trump says, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And that was said by some segregationist in 67. But I was suggesting that we were going to see some kind of a repeat of the Stonewall riots. And that was from 1969. And I was expecting it to be a singular event. And I suggested it would be specifically coming from the trans side, that it would be some kind of riot or event, and instead, we've had this spate of trans shooters. And this is a deliberate trend. I don't think, well, I'm saying these are all fake. They're just as fake as the other ones. But this is a character they've created because they're trying to market the terror to the right wing, and they're trying to get agreement on all sides that we need to do something about misinformation. Observing Reality says, Owen Benjamin must listen to your show because lately he's been espousing auto hoax core tenets. I haven't listened to him lately. I know he did have his Beartaria festival, which might make his Redditor critics mad because he's got like 6,000 people who hate on him 24/7. And now he has these big outdoor festivals and he does his comedy. I haven't seen the video. I don't know if it's funny or not, but I know that he has big gatherings of his followers. So there's a lot of attempts to drag him down. I don't know how fair it is. You're talking about donors and supporters, and it's not like they're victims necessarily, but he's made some enemies. But I don't know if I'd consider him to be an auto hoaxer because he's really big on the whole J thing and a lot of the culture war stuff. And I don't know. I would have to listen. But if he is espousing the idea that fakery is the rule, not the exception, then yeah, absolutely. That is where you would be arriving at if you're not caught up in these loudmouth guardrailers trying to keep you engaged in everything, looking for second shooters and third shooters. Okay, going through your comments. IFEP73 has joined us. Thank you. Pete Trippa says, why do all these shooters have to have a goodbye letter? Yeah, I want to read the manifesto of Audrey Hale. See, I think Audrey Hale is interesting again because the physical resemblance between that shooter and Elle and the Stranger Things connection, it runs pretty deep. We'll have to do another entire show on that. Kevin Mooring says, Starliner coming home empty. Yes. Starliner has been an unmitigated disaster. And my prediction is this. The capsule upon which they were stranded is called Calypso. In the Odyssey, Calypso keeps Odysseus stranded for a period of time. And then he goes off and he has to face the Cyclops and he has his tribulations and he barely makes it home. So we're like, well, what's next? Well, after these astronauts are escaping Calypso, we should expect them to run into the Cyclops. Some kind of disaster. And I got this article from Futurism. Retired NASA engineer warns Boeing Starliner could lose control during a crash. Go into a populated area, quote, let them duck and run. This is going to be here in New Mexico. So I might have to get my space junk helmet. Later today, NASA will attempt to autonomously undock Boeing's much-maligned Starliner spacecraft from the ISS and deorbit for a soft landing in the New Mexico desert. There's a high probability that the Boeing Starliner service module thrusters will exceed their design temperature limits and fail during the deorbit burn. So this was an email that was sent to NASA's commercial crew, and it said there's a high probability that the module debris and command module will impact in a populated area. Something to look forward to. But the Boeing thing has been synonymous with disaster since Leave the World Behind came out last year and had the theme of planes falling. So the Boeing, you had whistleblowers dying, CEO given a $33 million severance. And then I watched Fly Me to the Moon, and it was replete with Boeing references, connecting it to the Apollo 1 disaster and fiery explosions. They're trying to tell us something. Okay, let me see. Going through your comments. Mango says, Prime has a new show called Giants, mentioned that all the native burial grounds were the graves of giants and tribes assembled to conquer them. Turns out the humans were food. Well, I was just talking about the Cyclops, who would have been a giant, Polyphemus, son of Poseidon. And so what happens is, and we're talking about the space odyssey above, and how it correlates to the Odyssey of Homer and Odysseus. So Odysseus defeats the Cyclops, but then I think they blind him. And since the Cyclops is the son of Poseidon, Poseidon then is invoked in a curse. And so you can kind of correlate the idea of the sea with outer space, the abyss. You see these correlations made. Like last year, we had the Titan submersible imploding, and we noticed that this Boeing event was kind of happening around the same time as the previous year we had that disaster below. But yes, there may be some kind of incident. But I've read some things about these burial mounds. Didn't Abraham Lincoln say something? I've heard it was taken out of context, but I'm more inclined to believe in giants than dinosaurs. Just saying. I mean, for a few reasons. We're hit with so much propaganda before we're even able to defend against it in any meaningful way. Like, you're brought up as a child, everything's dinosaurs. You got the dinosaur on TV, all the kids hug the dinosaur pajamas, dinosaur wallpaper, you got a dinosaur mobile above your head. So you just think you're in a world of dinosaurs. These happy, colorful, smiley, talky, giant dragons. That's what they look like. And then the first day in school, you're shown the globe. Hey, this is where you live. And then you're taught, oh, the dinosaurs are all dead because of a big rock from space. See, that might be MK Ultra, trauma-induced mind control. So from the very first day of school, you're taught about mass extinction. Probably not a coincidence. Elephant says, I have another game to look into, the Metro series. They announced a new VR game called Metro Awakening. Survivors of nuclear Armageddon cling to life in the subway under Moscow. 2028. Okay, I'll have to look into that. Video games are huge. Video games are where you get some of the most immersive programming. And all the entertainment is there for your entrainment. It all is. There were millions of people plugged into that Black Myth, which has the Monkey King. The day the monkey statue in Houston, 90 foot tall, goes up. You had millions of people playing Modern Warfare 3 as 10-7 kicks off. Ollie Goering says, the Native Americans killed and ate the ginger giants. Well, I heard these fascinating stories about, like, the Smithsonian taking all the bones, hiding it all, and that it's some kind of big secret, and that dinosaurs are some kind of a false cover story. It's an interesting idea. I know people who believe in giants literally think that they live underground or something. I'm not a believer necessarily, but I am interested in these stories. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I'm interested in the stories. If someone wants to call in, I'll open phones in just a minute. Elephant Tusk says Netflix also has a new show about the gods called Chaos. As discord reigns on Mount Olympus and Almighty Zeus spirals into paranoia, 3 mortals are destined to reshape the future of mankind. Observing Reality says Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination. Oh, nice. Mango says, I saw Monkey Man today. It's kind of John Wicky. So Monkey Man is interesting for these reasons. It's about a boxer who wears this ape mask, and he takes a lot of beatings, and he gets mad, and he fights back. But it's about the rage. And we've seen this strong correlation between the monkeypox and the imagery of the rage virus being associated with the ape. And Monkey Man was produced by Jordan Peele, who did Nope, which has the killer chimp. And Nope was inspired by the spectacle surrounding the death of George Floyd. So there's a lot of thought that goes into this, and it's all connecting to the rage virus. Because what happened when people saw that? They caught a rage virus. They set cities on fire. So what we're talking about here is the advent of the meme, or like, for example, the death of Floyd. You could look at the image of the kneeling on his neck and all the symbolism attached to it. Derek is the name of a hangman. Chauvin, Western chauvinists like the Proud Boys. It conveys a lot of information in that one image, and it set off riots. So the rage virus could be a lot of things. And right now, what we're seeing with these movies and the monkeypox is this concept being consolidated. That's why Monkey Man was released on 3/11 of this year, Pandemic Day. Okay, continuing. Isabel Ann says, MK Ultra, like when Reggie Jackson tries to kill the Queen in Naked Gun. OJ and Priscilla are in that movie. Interesting. I might have to go check that out. OJ Simpson's a very interesting character. Supposedly, didn't he recently pass? And I question all this stuff. Like, I wondered, did he spend the rest of his life not in jail, but was he living in the basement of Megyn Kelly? Because if Megyn Kelly is Nicole Simpson, and they really were in love, and her death was a psyop, then she comes back as Megyn Kelly, they would have to keep their relationship a secret. And so I thought, well, maybe they just had their basement outfitted to look like a federal prison or something. All right, let me go ahead and catch up on this. Yeah, so we're waiting for the Starliner capsule to crash in a populated area here in New Mexico. We talked about Shaq having MK Ultra glitches. Okay, here we go. Let's get into the shooter, the Appalachia shooter Colt Gray. Now, Colt Gray was bullied for being gay and posted on Discord about his frustration with the acceptance of transgender people. And Synchro Morpheus had noted here that during the press conference, the sheriff uses the word fluid multiple times.
At about 9:30 this morning, we received the first call that there was an active shooter on this campus. We're not releasing any information as far as injuries, but we have multiple injuries. This is a very, very fluid investigation. It's very early.
So he conspicuously throws in the word fluid multiple times. And so he's suggesting this is coded scripting. And I agree with that. Because again, this is an engineered, manufactured, non-existent enemy that they've created to specifically frighten the right-wingers. Because left-wingers are frightened by neo-Nazis radicalized on Discord and by Tucker Carlson, who are going to go shoot up grocery stores in black neighborhoods. Like, they have their fears and these characters that they've already accepted as real. These are hyperstitions, is what you would call them. Hyperstitions. And in this case, we're looking at a new hyperstition. It says the shooter was known to the FBI, which we'll get into there. A Discord spokesperson told CNN that the platform removed the account associated with him in 2023 for violating Discord's policies against extremism. So now we're talking about this disease X, which was originally the name, or is the name, for the placeholder virus the WHO says is going to be the big one that shuts down the world again. And I've been saying since Twitter became X that disease X is a reference to the rage virus, the mind virus that's going to be unleashed, targeting the right wing through Elon Musk's platform. And as you can see here, Discord is looked at as like this petri dish. Like this is like a biolab, and they're engineering mind viruses, and they're just gestating, and they're developing. They're about to be set loose in the world, so we got to do something about these little enclaves, these little areas that are out of sight, out of mind, because somebody like a 14-year-old could go into a server, get some ideas, and then go do the bad things. So what we're looking at here is the real target, which is, of course, free speech. And they've introduced the idea of the mind virus. Okay, we'll get more information about this. I have a bit more. There's this story too. So I've been suggesting that there's a controlled demolition of the right wing, and there's a lot of right wing figures who have been very recently undergoing some kind of public fall from grace. You had the Telegram co-founder and chief executive detained, arrested. The European Commission wanting to arrest Musk. Andrew Tate and his brother, both of them being charged with a bunch of things. Nick Fuentes, something of a, I don't know if it's a fall from grace, but his groypers declared war on Trump. Then you have Candace Owen now being attacked by Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos and a lot of people. Alex Jones kind of kicked this off, getting sued for $1 gazillion. You have Steve Bannon in jail. Well, now we can add to it Tim Pool and others, and this is not surprising to me, but apparently Tim Pool and others are all considered to be operatives, or perhaps unbeknownst to Tim Pool and company, the company called Tenet Media, which was this pro-Trump supergroup, was actually funded by Russia. So somehow, Tim Pool is raking in $100,000 a week, and it's coming from Russia. And you hear him ranting about how much he hates Ukraine, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of sounds like it. Also, Benny Johnson, who high-fived Trump at the MMA event. And then you got Lauren Sutherland and Rick Rubin. Not Rick Rubin. His name is... What's this guy's name? Dave Rubin, excuse me. Rick Rubin's the producer, who put out a book on creativity that I really want to read. But anyway, Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson. Says, Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson address allegations that the company they are associated with have been paid to publish videos with messages in favor of Russia. And so I listened to Tim Pool to see what he's talking about, and he's almost deflecting because now he's suing Kamala Harris for defamation of character or something stupid like that. And I think he's doing it to distract people from the fact that this has now blown up. So again, more right-wingers undergoing some kind of controlled demo. Okay, and catch up on your comments. AnxG says, it has been said that Nicole Brown Simpson was played by her fake, non-existent sister, Denise Brown. Yeah, that would be likely. Siblings are often used. And it's not hard to do. You could take pictures of yourself when you were a baby, superimpose them into a recent photo, and then you could put out a headline and say, a wild hog ate my baby. Well, baby's gone, so must have happened. Fuentes declared that he, quote, knows too much and they want him dead. Well, Fuentes was called out by Tucker Carlson because he was there on January 6th calling for people to storm the Capitol. And yet, he wasn't arrested, which leads some people to think that Fuentes is a Fed and all of his groypers are having their information handed over to the Feds. Which isn't surprising. The unmeted mind says, so Fuentes to be fake dead soon? I don't know. I mean, he kind of went straight from school to online, very online. He's never really left his basement and had any real life experiences. So maybe. Okay, let's continue here. We're going through YouTube takes down right-wing channels linked to DOJ Russia indictments. So a couple of channels went down. So one of the connections here, though, is the company was called Tenet Media. And Tenet is the 2020 Christopher Nolan film. And in this film, you have a shooting scene at an orchestra that many pointed out looked like the Crocus scene. You know, the Crocus shooting? So the opening scene from Christopher Nolan's Tenet, eerily, they use that word eerie, whenever it's this purposeful entrainment and alignment and synchronization with entertainment and news, people say, oh, it's an eerie coincidence. They have to tell us. No, that's not what it is. The opening scene from Christopher Nolan's Tenet mimics the devastating attack in Moscow's Crocus City Hall. Terrorist attack, same. Yep, this person says it's called Revelation of the Method. That's the misinformation explanation. they'll tell you, oh, it's revelation of the method, because they don't have a full understanding. It's not a coincidence. And they're not revealing what they're going to do, because they're not really doing anything. They're simulating it. But here's a video on it.
Where domain dreams go to die.
Sorry, this is from BitChute. And by the way, bitchute.com/infiniteplane society, all of these videos, every live stream is automatically exported over there. Okay, so here it is, 2020 movie Tenet. Terrorist attack, same Crocus City Hall in Moscow. Is this a coincidence? Now, ironically, or maybe this is purposeful, what you see in the movies is always more realistic than what they show you on the news. This is true with outer space. Why are the science fiction movies in space more realistic than what NASA shows us? Like, that's a serious question. It's if you're a believer in outer space, you should ask yourself this question. And they're going to have to confront this. Just keep this in mind. When Tom Cruise goes to space, what are they going to do to his hair? Are they going to hairspray it to stick up vertical, like Medusa up there on the ISS? Or are they going to use CGI to have his hair flow around? Because that's going to just, to me, that's the dead giveaway. They're still using like 1990s special effects. Like, they're really not advanced. I mean, they're stuck with some of their old ways of doing things. And I'm just kind of curious to see what they do. But it's a common thing to see it more realistic in the movies than in real life. And it's probably part of how the mind control works. But my point in bringing this up is that you have a connection here with the mass shooting, Tenet, and the name of the company. Of course, the Russian money. So what's going on here? Angst G actually posted it. Wasn't there a movie called Tenet about some Russian oligarch building a time-warping doomsday machine? Seems odd. It's like part of the script or foreshadowing. And when we say predictive programming, we're talking about foreshadowing. We're talking about advertising, foreshadowing, conditioning, boring neural pathways, post-hypnotic suggestion. Angst G says they put the word Tenet in our heads as some Russian evil thingy and then roll out Tenet Media, a Russian company. Ryler says, what do you think about the amateur photographs of the ISS? I would put the word amateur in quotation marks. Mick Toon sent me his picture of the ISS, and it came from a solar transit. And I have to reiterate this. Solar transits don't count. Why? Because there's no eyewitness. If you have a solar filter on your telescope and you're recording the ISS going in front of the sun, then you can't see it with your own eyes. And I'm trying to get eyewitness footage, and we don't have any. It's always through that filter, where you have a possibility of there being an insert shot. And the fact that Mick Toon provided an ISS transit means that, like Jaron, he's on NASA's payroll. NASA is a movie production company. Yeah, there's some science to a certain level, but above the Kármán line, it's all BS. And anybody providing an ISS transit in front of the moon or in front of the sun is going to necessarily have to use the same file, the same little Jiffy or GIF, the same little PNG with a clear background that they can drag across their screen in a little animation. It's systematized. And, you know, one other thing. Anytime you watch an ISS transit in front of the sun or moon, it goes very fast. It goes so fast if you blink, you miss it. So how does the ISS traverse the width of the sun in the blink of an eye, but then they claim you can see it for 6 to 11 minutes over your head at night? We're talking about the width of the sun in the blink of an eye, and then extrapolate from that 11 minutes. No, it doesn't make sense. There are so many liars out there in the world. I mean, there's big money in it. Revelation of the method, says my third eye, is just prepping the collective psyche to make the event seem believable. Yes, it's post-hypnotic suggestion, and it is conditioning. So you can take something that's not in the realm of possibility, fill their minds with this thing, and then they present it to you, and because of recency and it's in your frame of reference, it becomes more believable. That's part of the, that's what foreshadowing is. But revelation of the method is a phrase that comes from Michael Hoffman, who wrote Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, and he claimed that if they tell you what they're going to do to you later, then they don't have any negative karmic repercussions for it. That's a ridiculous take on it. It has a misunderstanding of what karma is, with the idea that we're consenting to bad things because we saw it on TV. Like, that sounds schizo. And that's a BS explanation that for years has sufficed. InfoWars used it. They said, hey, look, white noise, train derailment, Ohio, toxic airborne event. And then it happens in Palestine. This is revelation of the method. The dark occultists have to tell you what they're going to do to you. Wrong. Because every single event preceded by predictive programming, foreshadowing in the entertainment, has been fake. So if they're going to fake something, then there's no, quote, negative vibes or whatever bouncing off of it. But that's one of those explanations that they use to mystify. So instead of demystifying media and understanding its architecture, instead you have people throwing in dark occultists and wizards and demiurges and supercomputers, and they get lost in this paranormal speculation. Some of them never come back down from it. They believe the media has divine authorship because it's so complex that man couldn't have organized this stuff. That's kind of a violation of Arthur C. Clarke's law about any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. It's like, yeah, mass media, as it is, monolithically conveying a single worldview and how synchronized it is so complex that it does look like magic at times. Like, how could somebody have planned this? How did this event? And that's what they say, these are eerie coincidences. And I can list off a number of coincidences with Netflix movies, and Netflix, Amazon, and others releasing films just as something contemporaneous happens in the news that specifically correlates with it. So many examples, in fact, that the only logical conclusion is that this is standard operating procedure. And if you don't know about predictive programming, then you're misinformed. And your point of view, your perspective is incomplete. You don't have enough information to believe what you espouse to believe, or rather to know it to be true, but you're stuck in this gray area. Like, I believe it's true because I trust that blue check. But you don't have any facts on your own to substantiate it. All right, continuing. Revelation of the method. Yeah, revelation of the method is horse manure, says Angst G. Yeah, it's deliberately placed toxic misinformation. And it does this, it gives plausible deniability. It also kind of absolves the perps. It does, and there's so many problems with it. I've analyzed this ad nauseum. But the idea that predictive programming would predict real events is rendered nonsensical when you realize that these events that are being predicted are replete with actors. Obvious fakery. And so the idea that there's a super computer or a eerie coincidences involved in it, it's like, well, why would the universe orchestrate massive synchronistic events on the world stage when the events are themselves fake? Like, why would it somehow, it doesn't quite add up. The most likely explanation is that this is just a facet of how media works. Because again, entertainment media and news media come from the same source ultimately. And what they're doing is called entrainment. They're entraining your subconscious mind to accept everything they show to your conscious mind. And it's done through post-hypnotic suggestion, predictive programming, foreshadowing, and they're merging real and fake. And we see this all the time. That's why when Robert De Niro was out on the world stage ranting about Trump a couple months ago, we were able to see in that and extrapolate from it predictive programming for the incoming headshot, which we accurately called would be on the right side of his head. Quay says, always shattering my paradigms, Tim. Thanks. Well, the IPS is poised to deliver a paradigm shock to the system. And our objective isn't to, quote, wake everybody up, but we do want to send a strong enough signal so anyone on the correct side of the screen can join us, can fill out this parallel media. This is a third branch of media. We're not mainstream. We're not alternative media. We left the alternate cave. We're not a part of that. And it wasn't easy to extract ourselves from that, because that is a whole group of people that fall into this big tent, and just by default they're heavily influenced by these influencers who are placed there for the very purpose of keeping people entrained in the propaganda, giving them alternative explanations for things that don't add up. I mean, it's pretty pathetic to see Owen Schroyer talking about second shooter on the water tower and deep state plots to kill Trump. Like, they're so far behind. Ryler says the victims in the shooting in Georgia, one was named Mason, one was Krista, and the other was Christian. I saw that. A Mason, a Christian, and Krista. Slick Rick says, Tim, are you planning to vote Harris Walz? Yeah, I'm a conscientious objector to the Psy-War. So voting is like picking up a gun. Like, I can't, in good conscience, throw some munitions into this war. Like, I'm not part of it. So in principle, I'm opposed to it. However, since 2017 or 2016, we have witnessed how the GOP has turned conspiracy theorists into a voting bloc. And now, like lemmings, they're all lockstep. Every single truther, red pillar, QAnon, anybody who's against mainstream media is suddenly going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, don't you realize that you played into a Masonic dialectic here? It's plain to see. And it's just bad hopium at this point. You're going to vote for somebody who is running psyops against you. January 6th, July 13th. These are psyops. These are hoaxes that involve the person you're voting for. I mean, you have to give credit. Trump is a magician. And Marina Abramovich said that Trump is a great magician. Well, he did a magic show. He did a magic show, a trick in front of the world, and fooled everybody. The whole thing with the blood capsule on his ear, the ketchup packet, like they stopped at Mickey D's on the way to the rally. You get me an extra ketchup packet so I can rub it on my face, make it look like I got shot at. My ear got pierced by an AR-15, and then it miraculously healed. And nobody's even asking about that. Like, how did his ear just regenerate? Was it a med bed? That's probably what the QAnons think. He went to a med bed. Unbelievable. So we're talking about this Trump as like some sort of a leader, this commander-in-chief, like secretly fighting the deep state. And some people have this hope that if they vote for him, it's going to change anything. And what I'm saying is that the world stage is a closed system. They have merged the entertainment realm and fictional universe upon fictional universe with the real world. And it's a realm of utter subjectivity. And all of humanity is programmed. There is no option. You know, you're programmed by default. The programmers run the show. And most of the programmers are themselves programmed mostly all the way. I would imagine that they're only let in on certain things. But looking at it from this perspective, of course I'm not going to vote. But since I see how all of the free thinkers have been co-opted, I have to make a statement. And the way I'm going to make a statement is I'm going to vote for Harris publicly because I don't think it means anything. And I just want to see if they get triggered. Because if they get triggered, it means that they're still triggerable. And if they can control you, if they control you, they can control you. And so if you're trolled by me voting for Harris, if you think that I'm going to cause communism, then yeah, they're still under your skin. So I'm doing it to make a point. Sort of a protest vote. Ted Stryker says, have you played the video of the shooting that had the kids smirking? I haven't yet. We're going to get to it. I have an image of one of the shooting witnesses. And one point about these events. When they're happening at schools, if you're looking at minors on TV, like 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds or whatever, high schoolers, they shouldn't be talking to the news about having just witnessed a mass murder. That's very problematic for a few reasons. I've even called and spoken to some police departments about this, just asking questions like, would you advise it? But I was told that they would need a waiver from the parents. So the parents would have had to have said, yes, you can go on TV and flash the devil horns and stick out your tongue because you're getting paid. And that's what you're looking at here. They're all laughing and they're all making money off this. And I did play one of the videos. I listened to one earlier, and the student was like, oh, I thought it was a drill at first because we have so many drills, but this one was not a drill. I heard someone else say pop, pop, pop. If you see 33s, if you hear pop, 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 or someone says it's like a movie, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Ryler05 says, according to Q, if Hillary was elected, we'd all be dead. It's like Trump has to get in because he's the lesser of two evils. In other words, they believe in elections, but we know it's selections. Right. Vanden says, The Boys is a fictitious series that was filmed in 2023, and any scene or plotline similarities to those of real-world events are coincidental and unintentional. So it's filmed in 2023, but the season finale, Season 4, Episode 8, has the Homelander, who's based on Trump, with blood on the right side of his face, looking at the camera during this assassination scene where someone gets killed. 4-8. Then you go to Stranger Things, which I mentioned, already has lots of connections with mass shooters. And Season 4, Episode 8, has the Trump character, and I'll explain how he's a Trump character, getting shot. And it's Matthew Modine, who plays Joker in Full Metal Jacket, the Kubrick film. And Joker is a reference to JFK. But the 4-8, and JL always talks about the code 4884, which is a very consistent thing here in all the movies, all the series. But the fact is, they had to change the title of Assassination Run because a year in advance, they perfectly predicted something. I have a blog up with my 11 favorite examples of predictive programming for the Trump thing. One of them is, and I should watch this, the Captain America Civil War. I think it was called New World Order, and they changed it to Civil War. But it has Harrison Ford as president being shot at on the trailer that came out right as the Trump shooting happened. Harrison Ford was born on 7/13, by the way. But he's shot at, and he's shielded, and it comes out the same day, Harrison Ford. There's a lot of connections there that we got into, but just one example. Joined by This Is Where It's At, NBD. Thank you for joining. We have 120 people here on YouTube. Buzzing Fret says, gotta fight the deep state. Yeah, that's one of the big ruses here, is they're like, we gotta fight the deep state, which implies that there's a not deep state. No, because when you get down to it, both sides, and this is not just both sides left and right, but even globally, quote unquote, there's a level of agreement when it comes to certain big psyops or hyperstitions. For example, the existence of the atomic bomb and weapons of mass destruction, outer space, these big picture things that shape our paradigm. Specifically, the atom bomb. I mean, that pretty much dragged mankind into a new age where suddenly we're all in this sort of a hostage situation, a standoff, and at any moment, anybody in a position of power can push a button and start off mutually assured destruction. So we entered the end times. And the idea that we're in the end times has always been a grift. We've always mocked prophets, end times prophets, but they never go away. But the cult of scientism is a major end times doomsday cult. And if you don't believe we're in the end times, then you don't trust the science. If you didn't know, we do have a one world religion, and in all likelihood, unless you stepped out of it, it's your religion. And you can call it nasatology, if you think about big picture cosmology. But I would also call it maybe the Church of Scientism. Scientism and nasatology. Okay, let's go ahead and continue through the notes. So we're looking at a couple of eyewitnesses making faces at the camera after such a tragic event. I'm scrolling back a few days because it's been a few days. Okay, here we go. I found one of the witnesses. And one of the first things out of this witness's mouth is that this event, I'll pull this person up, seemed like a drill. And then we'll look at the shooter himself, who again connected himself with Lanza and Cruz. Okay, Brittany Edney on X. Students at Appalachia High School described the chaos of the school shooting unfolding and how their favorite math teacher was shot. She saw him lying on a pile of blood. A pile of blood, huh? Now, I would also bring up here, you're talking about a minor. So the parents said, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's go ahead and put your face out there. We'll just assume there was only one shooter and they caught the guy. Let's not leave open the possibility that you're putting yourself out there as a witness and maybe putting yourself in danger. Like, this is just ill-advised. And I watched some of the reports and they're talking about the chaos. And it's like you see a bunch of cop cars and you see some firemen and cops like eating donuts or something, but there's no chaos. It's sort of like how you'll see these weather reports where the reporter is leaning 45 degrees because it's so windy, he's in a hurricane, and the camera's shaking, and he's like, yeah, it's really bad out here. But then behind him, you see an elderly couple walking their poodle, standing upright. Like, they're always messing with your perceptions, telling you, don't believe your long eyes. But let's play this clip.
Times. So everybody, and we do drills all the times. So
oh, we do drills all the time. Play that one more time.
And we do drills all the times. So
now let me ask you this question. What's more likely to follow hyper-realistic school shooting drills? This is just, I don't know, I think this is just crazy to me. It's like we look at all these schools, what they all have in common is they do drills for these things before these things happen. Like, the biggest predictor that you're going to have a mass shooting is that you drilled for it. Like, you would think that doing drill after drill after drill would prevent these things. But no, it seems like the more they do the drills, the more likely it's going to happen. It's kind of weird. I can't quite put my finger on it. What is the cause here? Students at Appalachia High School described the chaos of the school shooting unfolding. Okay, here's another one. Georgia High School shooting, Appalachia, 9/4/2024.
But around this strip, there's also a pre-K school, an elementary school, a middle school, and Boris...
Oh, yeah, we got to get those bricks in there.
Great video here by Game Time Woo. Good breakdown, just pointing out the symbolism, the bricks, and all that. I'll put a link down there. But it's always the drill. And all of these drills are simulations based on a script. And all they have to do is present it as real. That's all it is. Like, people think, oh, they kill people at these events. No, they don't. What's your evidence? They don't shoot people during drills, do they? They don't burn people during fire drills, do they? Like, no. These are simulations. And the event as presented on TV would be best described as a propaganda film. I think that's what it would probably fit the description better than a false flag. So another misnomer here is to call these things false flags. False flag meaning it did happen, but the cause was something else, like the deep state sent the shooter or something silly like that, which is very common. But they all presuppose that the event itself happened. But again, that's contrary to evidence. And if you believe it's real, the only thing you can really say to yourself is, I believe it's real in my heart because I trust that the news, at least in part, isn't lying. And this is when I say lying, this is what I mean. Like the way that they lie is strategically. So the mass media is a liar, but you can't say everything is fake or everything's a lie. Good liars tell the truth 99% of the time, so you trust them. They become reliable on that. And then once they have your total trust, then they can strategically lie and hit you in your blind spots. So what happens is the news media may be mostly dupes, but just faithfully reporting what's happening, the mundane things. But then when you have a simulated event such as this, then you have the PSYOP department take over, the people in the know. And this isn't just news media doing hoaxes. This would necessarily involve police, fire departments, politicians, all the way up. There's no way these things happen without being signed off on at the very capstone level of the lie world order. These aren't anomalies. These aren't hoaxes. These are historic events. They write your history in advance. And that's not a really difficult claim to back, because every single simulated event has a script. Every PR stunt has a script. And if they present it on TV as real and it gets thrown into the history books, well, now it's part of history. Napoleon Bonaparte said history is lies agreed upon. Mass media is lies agreed upon. So they are able to steer our collective worldview, our paradigm, through these events. Transformative psychological operations. Some of them are big spectacles. Some of them take place over a generation. So we have the mass shooting generation, for example. Before that, it was duck and cover. But you have various psyops that are always there, just kind of framing our perspective on everything. One of the school shooting victims was Mason Schmermerhorn, a student with autism. I think they were posting stuff the same day. They might have had a vigil the same day as well. It has all the hallmarks of a hoax. You get the whole story. You get the Scooby-Doo episode. It's like before the end of one episode, they find out who the bad guy is, they unmask him, and they solve the crime. And the media is so good at this, they're able to say by the end of the day who did it and why. And here's the manifesto. And they already have a story out that the father's been arrested. They've taken the father to jail because what if son, and the son's going to be tried as an adult. Oh, by the way, let me add on to this. So there was all kinds of stories about the Hells Angels driving to Colorado to save Aurora from Venezuelan gangs. And I said it was a hoax. Right off the bat. I said there's no way. This is like how every year the National Guard have their drills and truthers will see tanks and Humvees and they'll say that we're being attacked. It happens every year. Well, there's a story that Aurora, Colorado has these Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complexes, and I suggested this was just fake right-wing propaganda because of open borders, election year, just ignore it. Well, sure enough, it turns out that there's a motorcycle rally in Durango, Colorado. So those weren't Hell's Angels. Nor is there any truth to the idea that Venezuelan gangs took over that apartment. The tenants there say it's not even true. And so I'm looking into this, and I'm finding that the whole thing is entirely a hoax. Just pointing it out. And I have a message here from JF1. He says, there's no footage of the Venezuelans taking over the building. Why is there no footage? Fake until proven real. And yes, fake until proven real. is an autohoaxology axiom. There was no evidence to support that it was real, but it's a rumor that was spread by people like Sam Tripoli. I don't know if Alex Jones did it, but a lot of big name truther conspiracy types were pushing this. A lot of QAnoners. QAnoners were like, yeah, we're going to be saved by the Hells Angels. It's fantasy. They live in this community-generated fan fiction universe. It's entirely delusional. And it gets even worse. I mean, here's something. As crazy as it might sound, President Donald Trump is played by John F. Kennedy Sr., and he's the second coming of Christ. Like, that's still floating around, if you haven't heard that. But just to be clear, the Hells Angels were not in any way involved in saving Aurora. And I don't even know if this is true about the Venezuelan gangs. I listened to an interview with someone who was familiar with the landlord there, and there may have been some ulterior motives for this report getting out. But as far as the Venezuelan gang members, that's kind of like a trope. Like, I think after 2016, there was a story about this. They called it the Beast. Some train bringing gangs from South America to come take over America, and Trump was going to build a wall and stop them. It's an old recycled story based on nothing. And when you get down to it, it's just xenophobia is what it comes down to. Because it's like, oh, military age men are coming over here. And the left says, oh, the military age men coming to take over to the left are worker age men, working age. So it's one of these bifurcated things. And I also think it's kind of interesting how the people who think that we're being depopulated, like, oh, we're running out of people, we're being depopulated. Then they see tens of millions of immigrants, and suddenly they're against that. So then what is it? Are you worried about Bill Gates depopulating the human race? Or are you xenophobic and you don't want more people coming in? So it may actually be the case that depopulation is code for, quote, white genocide, which is a psyop in itself, which I obviously don't believe in. They can never say what they mean directly. The right-wing belief systems are largely repackaged older conspiracy theories that have been given a level of acceptability because they don't say things too blatantly. Like when Alex Jones says globalists, or when David Icke says reptilians, it's not hard to figure out what they're referencing behind these euphemisms. But why the euphemisms? Water Walking Jesus says, did those kids at least get to eat free lunch before they got taken out? I think there was only 2 deaths and 2 teachers. Quay says, I will say there are tons of Venezuelans that just moved to Denver. I'll have to look, but the idea that these are gangs taking over the apartments, that's been largely debunked. Ryler says, Denver has lots of Hispanic people anyway, nobody living there. I am worried about Venezuelan gangs taking away the jobs of American gangs, like Bloods and Crips. Like, we can't have that. Are they going to vote Trump? Ryler says, Trump didn't get popular in 2016 until he started saying racist stuff. When he said that the Mexicans were rapists and we needed to build a wall, and he never built the wall. And Steve Bannon, who's in jail, by the way, raised $4 million to build the wall. And he didn't. But he got pardoned by Trump. And I'm thinking, maybe they ought to put Steve Bannon into some kind of forced labor program where he makes bricks. Just have him make bricks. And let him build the wall. It's a lot of money. A huge grift. One of my favorite grifters of recent years is actually Lynn Wood, the guy who raised $4 million for Kyle Rittenhouse and pocketed the money. And he managed to convince Rittenhouse's mom to keep him in jail. He said, yeah, Wendy Rittenhouse, keep your son in jail because after the election there's going to be an apocalypse and he'll be safer in jail. Meanwhile, he raises all that money. It's all a grift. Tim Pool getting $100,000 a week to spout pro-Russia propaganda. Let's see, there's another shooting too. Reports are now coming in that there have been 30 injuries and 4 deaths. Okay, that's the one. 30 injuries and 4 deaths. That's 34. And you all know what 34 means. It's code. It's code for 33. Hiding right behind it. They've been doing this for some time. In fact, there's some 33-year-old rapper who just died, and there's conflicting reports that he's 34. But in one of the reports, 34, 33, but he has a song called 34. Now check this out. This is about the shooter. Suspected Georgia shooter. The adults around him failed. His aunt said that he begged for mental health help. So this storyline here ties into the Riddler and ties into the Prophet of Doom, Frank James, who did that subway shooting as Batman came out with the Riddler in it. The idea was the Prophet of Doom was sending videos to the mayor of New York about how there wasn't adequate mental health care. The Riddler had a similar issue. The Joker was mentally ill and underserved, and that began his Kill the Rich campaign. And if you watch the Joker movie, it's Marxist class warfare, oppressed versus the oppressors. But in this case, he begged for mental health help. And this is intriguing. So here we have look, 10 ways the Batman handled mental health better than Arkham Asylum. Much like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, the Riddler was neglected and mistreated by society, which led to him having a mental illness. So one of the subtexts here is that were it not for Western society as it is right now, presently construed, there would not be these victims who are exhibiting mental illness. So these are victims of society. They're ill because of society. And so they're symptoms. So when you have a shooter popping off, oh, it's not about that shooter. It's about the root causes in society that he's just a symptom of. And that's what Joker represented. So they fell through the cracks. Again, that's just been attached to the present narrative. Again, one of the other stories to come out attached to this is that the shooter has been arrested. He'll be tried as an adult, and his father is also in jail. His name is Colt Gray. Here's a picture of him. Matt Wallace says, every single mass shooter in the last 2 years has been carried out by a transgender individual. Now, that's, again, this is propaganda. They engineered this. Matt Wallace is Jack Posobiec level. These are high-level pose, parodies of extremism. They take the extreme views on these talking points and run with it, but that's kind of their gig. And what they have done is they've created, like, this is the equivalent of the neo-Nazi bowl cut shooter. Okay, here's the rapper I wanted to bring up. His name is Richie Homie Quan, Atlanta rapper 33. He scored a big hit in 2015 with Type of Way. The manner and cause of death have not been publicly released. You'll notice the Masonic checkerboard jacket. Here's some headlines. Rich homie dead 33, dead 33, dead 34, dead 33, dead 34. Which one is it? Which one is it? 34 is the new 33. Trump has 34 felony counts or indictments. They always have to adapt, I think. So he's got a song called 34. Herschel Walker used to ride that Marta 34. Pants sagging, bankroll in my pocket, and that 30 close. I don't know what it means. I'll probably look into it, but when it comes to high-profile deaths like this, I say fake until proven real. I found something today. This might actually be a thing. The predictive programming defense. Trump is invoking this. So here's Trump talking about E. Jean Carroll. I think he's trying to have her court victory overturned. But he's talking about how her entire claim about how he assaulted her at a department store was actually from an episode of Law and Order. And this has been brought up before, that she's obsessed with Law and Order and everything about the story came from that episode. Well, here's Trump bringing it up. So it's almost like the predictive programming defense.
Fabricated 100% that I attacked her at Bergdorf Goodman. You know, it's very interesting. I don't think they were allowed to use this either. Her favorite show is Law and Order. And there's a almost exact story as her story in Law and Order about being attacked in the dressing room of a department store. I don't know if they used the name of the store, but that's her favorite show, Law and Order. She said that. And anyway, this evolved into a defamation case against me because I disputed her words because I told the truth. We were called. I was in the White House, and I said, no, it never happened. I didn't even know what they were talking about. This was, I think I was.
Well, there you have it, the predictive programming defense. But we should also point out that his headshot thing has been predicted in numerous movies and films and comics, games. There's so much foreshadowing. All right, continuing. Breaking, former Deputy Assistant General Tom Dupree drops a bomb on MAGA. He predicts that Donald Trump's backtracking on the big lie could land him in prison. Trump's remarks on August 30th that Biden, quote, beat us by a whisker is a reversal of his claim that the election was stolen. The whole thrust of Jack Smith's indictment is that Trump was trying to defraud or cheat to steal an election he didn't win. If he's admitting now that he knew he lost, fascinating, then he was trying to steal something. Here's Nick Fuentes, who's pretty mad about it. And again, it's kind of strange that he would be ranting about this considering he was there on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th telling people to storm the Capitol.
So why did we do Stop the Steal? Why did anyone go to January 6th? Why is anyone sitting in jail? Why did anything bad happen to anybody? Why did everyone get censored? Why is everything bad that has happened to the people that are involved, why did that need to happen if you're just going to walk it all back and say, oh, I lost? Well, it would have been good to know that before 1,600 people got charged. It would have been good to know that before I had all my money frozen, put on a no-fly list, banned from everything, lost all banking and payment processing.
All right. I mean, he hitched his entire life to the Trump train. He's totally immersed in this world, and it's crumbling. Very interesting to watch. The controlled demolition of the far right. And this is, again, the face of America First, AF-16. Interesting code there. And the fact that he's not in jail. He should have been in a cell with a QAnon shaman. Walter Walking says, hey, I think a lot of these guys fake their death, and it's in their contract to have their characters killed. I think so, too. I think there's some financial gain in it. It's a common psyop. Unmediated mindset. Who caters these drills? We need to find out and have them cater AutoHoaxCon. Yeah, who brings the water bottles? You always see these psyops. There's always water bottles everywhere. Didn't they have porta-johns at that one school? Like set up? Staging areas? Ryler says, if Trump is playing the role of Biff Tannen, then who's Marty McFly? Good question. Josh Lebsock says, auto hoax or GTFO? Pretty much. And it's not that we have to tell people that. If you don't auto hoax, you won't make it to the raft. You're actually stuck on the wrong side of the screen. You'll have one or more guardrails holding you there. What is it? I don't know. Maybe you can't get yourself to walk out from underneath the chemtrails, because there's no chemtrails above the raft. Isabel Ann says, the Audrey Hale notebook had the Trump shooting date scribbled in it, 7/13. Interesting. I can't wait to look at that. Now, when Jack Posobiec made a big deal about the Audrey Hale event, he started this daily count Audrey Hale in hell, because he was convinced they were hiding the manifesto because the shooter was a Satanist. Now, here's what I mean when I say this is fascinating and it's connected to Stranger Things. One of the stories that came out that Posobiec published is that during the shooting, Audrey Hale goes into the chapel and they have a stained glass of Adam and shoots Adam. So kills the first created man or destroys that image. Now, he started this count, Audrey Hale in hell, day 1, day 2, day 3. So he'd be like, oh, it's 35 days since Audrey Hale's been in hell. Well, Audrey Hale looks like Elle from Stranger Things, and they go into what they call the Upside Down, the underworld. They're in the Hellfire Club. So it's all about their journey through hell. And in hell, Elle, the main character who looks like Audrey Hale, has to kill number 1. You see, she's number 11. They call her L for 11. But the first created mind control subject in that experiment was number 1. And Audrey Hale looks like Elle who kills number 1. So number 1 and Adam, the first created man. These various parallels. But the hell and the underworld thing is another big connection there. And one more connection. Stranger Things, the series, takes place during the Satanic Panic of the 80s. And Jack Posobiec explicitly said that we need a new Satanic Panic to straighten things out. Interestingly, Pizzagate is a Satanic Panic. And who started Pizzagate? Jack Posobiec at Comet Pizza, live streaming there. Violet Pengon has handed out 5 blue wrenches. Lane Dion, Multigrain, Plain Decoded, Me and My Drone, Nicotramus all have the blue wrench. By the way, I will be doing a lot more live streamed art related to what we're doing here, among other things. So you might want to hit the notification bell. Unmediated Mind says, a 23-year-old Amish survivor of a 2006 shooting died the day of the Georgia event. Do you remember there were so many of those situations where somebody survives a shooting at a mall in Canada and then they die in Aurora? Or they survived a shooting in Vegas and they get shot at in California. And there are so many of these stories. It goes back and forth. And you're like, wait, this is getting really interesting. And when you get into the details, we had found some examples of shooting victims from 2 different events, Vegas and Thousand Oaks. And one of them at Thousand Oaks was wearing some shirt that seemed connected to an acting or some kind of a theater company in Florida that was also worn by one of the victims of the Pulse shooting. N.A. Literalist says no red wrench. We do have a red wrench lodge for those who want to be involved at a deeper level. Red wrench, those of you who know. There's rumored to be a black wrench lodge. I can't substantiate that. This is where it's at. Matt X, IFEP73, Oliver, Travis Cloud have all received the blue wrench, courtesy of Violet Pengon. Thank you so much. And just a heads up here, for those of you who might have missed it, I did pre-sell 19 or 20 copies of The Insider. However, when I first started this project, it was 16 pages. When I sent it to the publisher, it was 32. And it priced it out of my range. So I had no choice but to, at this time, postpone. So I went ahead and I hit refund on all of those, but it's not a cancellation of the project. What's going to happen instead is I'm going to have to take at least, I think, 40 pre-orders in order to afford to bring in the copies here and keep the cost at under $5, basically, or $5 plus shipping. So I don't want the prices to shoot up, but I do want this project to continue. So what I'm going to do is release it again monthly as a digital tabloid, but then every quarter I'll publish it. So we'll have the first print one will be likely in November. The 32 page, The costs, it depends on how many we pre-order, but if I can get 50 pre-orders, we can make it happen. But I was close. It was a test. I thought I was going to pull it off, and I thought it was going to work, but it didn't. But again, like I said, it's not really a cancellation in any way. I have a few things happened that are really positive as far as this project goes. I have a template. I've worked with the printer enough to now everything gets approved. I don't have to resize images. So it's ready to launch. And I could do print on demand, but we need more numbers. So I'm going to work on marketing, and likely there's a good chance I'll order a handful to have them in studio for the end of this month. So there is a chance. It's one of the reasons why I'm working on art and other things. But once we get the ball rolling, once we have issue 1 out in print, issue 2, I'm always going to keep back orders stocked up. But if it has to be quarterly, I can make it work. So either way, it's moving forward. But 32 pages, that's a lot of content, a lot of space. And there's a lot of room for people who have articles, blogs, if you want to promote anything. If you have a YouTube channel, and it's primarily, like, we're trying to build a network of anybody who does media skepticism, media deconstruction, auto-hoaxing, decoding, any of this stuff. And I have a classified page where you could put a thumbnail of your channel and a QR code. One of the things that's going to be a feature of this tabloid is every article will have an associated code to scan to download MP3s, videos, or anything else. Quay says, I make stickers and we're glad to make a stack of IPS ones. Absolutely. Mango says, poetry redirection. Yes, absolutely. Poetry, music, art, stickers, all will be accepted. In fact, if you have stickers, I would like to have you email me and we'll talk about it, because I've been working on some designs. I've been using AI to get some concepts, but I do want to work with Sticker Mule. I've seen some examples of their work and it's all incredible. And what I would like to do as well, because I'm having all of the copies of the tabloid sent here first, and since I have them here, I'll be able to add stuff in the envelope, stickers, art, etc., business cards. But what we're doing with this is a newspaper that is not targeted at Normieville or Trutherville. In fact, it refutes the claims of both. It is specifically a publication from the perspective of the off-world stage, meaning a perspective of the worldview as filtered, as advertised, but fully aware that what we're seeing is contextualized within a broader psychological warfare operation that targets every single person on Earth. And if you don't believe me, if you think that's an exaggeration, just think about the significance of the atom bomb, or even mass school shooting, these terror attacks, how these simulated events affect us down to the level of the individual. I remember in 2020, some guy in China ate a bat, and we all had to stay home for most of the year. So you can't say that you're exempt from it because you don't believe in it. Being a non-believer is not enough, because we're outnumbered by believers. But what we are doing deliberately is we are fomenting a culture of disbelief. Conscious Daughter says, Tim, what's your view on gang stalking or targeted individuals? Well, I was gang stalked, with permission at first. Like when I joined the Freemasons, you have to let them investigate you. They talk to people behind your back you don't know. They do a thorough investigation. But I did experience what I would consider to be some kind of stalking activity. I experienced that from Scientology as well. And I have numerous examples and witnesses to this. So it is real. It's a tactic. And I think that they deliberately let me know. Like I was, in various ways, I think I was kind of let in on it. Like they let themselves be seen. Because it's part of scaring you that they're everywhere. But what's more, when this channel started to really take off, we had been targeted by somebody who works for the White House press corps. Someone who is connected with Trump, the campaign. Someone who is connected in entertainment media, MMA, big in Trutherville behind the scenes. So the fact that Goldfinch was stalking us, and it wasn't just him, there were a lot of people he employed. In fact, he bragged about this in an email which I intercepted, that he had 2 people in my Discord server spying on me, sending him screen caps of anything that I said. And he would send me these screen caps. So I actually know the identity of one of the persons that was spying on me. Karen B, the one who organizes the Flattoberfests, which I think they're having Flattoberfest in September this year. But anyway, yeah, Karen B was spying on me on behalf of MG. So the spying is real. I also have some other indications that there are others, but that's part of it. So gang stalking is a thing. And there are many cults that employ this tactic. But what I'm kind of thinking about here, when you say targeted individuals, you have some people who think that they may be subject of an experiment, that there's perhaps some other reason for it. I don't know. But the technology's there. It would be very on brand. N.A. Literalist said, Karen B is a spy and an agent. Well, you know, it was Karen B who spilled the beans about Roland Reddy, the redneck rocket scientist. If you don't know about Roland Reddy, the redneck rocket scientist, this is hilarious. One of the first Flat Earth Conference speakers, the MC, big-time domer Christian flat earther who believed in the dome and that God was revealing the flat earth. Like, this is a big Christian thing. Well, his name was Rick Hummer. I assume it's his real name. So here he is, speaker at this conference with all these flat earth sheeple, just basically listening to everything he says, taking it seriously. We're under a dome. He's got Robbie Davidson. They had, at that time, they still had Philip Stallings, who's in prison for terrible stuff involving children. Yes, the founder of the Bible Flat Earth Society, Philip Stallings, who did multiple movies and documentaries with the Flat Earth Conference organizers, is literally serving the rest of his life in prison for child abuse. Like, that's how 1 degree separation. I mean, it's so insane when you look at the conference organizers and how it's all connected to just feds and peds. But anyway, it turns out that Rick Hummer had a disguise where he had put on these buck teeth and this ridiculous costume, and he would pretend to be a dumb, quote, redneck. So he had portrayed this offensive ethnic stereotype, and he would just play really dumb. And he goes up to Neil deGrasse Tyson, of all people, because, you know, as you do, you just walk up to Neil deGrasse Tyson when you're dressed like a homeless, buck-tooth, hobo redneck thing. And he says to Neil deGrasse Tyson something about how, what do you think about the earth is flat? And Neil said, oh, this is obviously a failure of the public education system. And that went viral. And we're like, who the hell is this guy who got an audience with Neil deGrasse Tyson, looked crazy, and went viral? Well, it turns out, yeah, he was the leader of the conference in disguise. And I heard about this through Karen B's ex-boyfriend, who was mad at her because she told him to shave his beard, and he did, and then she dumped him. So he was pretty mad. He gets to my server, and he's like, well, hey, I was in on this conversation. Nobody's supposed to know this, but Rick Hummer is that Roland Reddy guy. So I started talking about this, and everybody said I was crazy. They said I was a liar, that I was making it up. And so I went on to a live stream where D Marble was in his van doing his van life thing, and I sent him a super chat. I said, here's $5. I said, Rick Hummer is Roland Reddy. So D Marble reads my super chat, and immediately Rick Hummer calls in. And then other people call in, and they just sort of dogpiled, hating on me for calling out a deep fake. Why does this matter? Well, one, Rick Hummer is dating Jimmy Kimmel's sister. He's friends with he has all kinds of deep Hollywood connections. They had Jimmy Kimmel's crew infiltrate a conference and make everybody look like fools. But there's the deception part of it, where he clowns everybody while at the same time he's leading the conferences. So it's kind of like this wolf in sheep's clothing thing. But that information was leaked by Karen B because she was part of the PSYOP, is my point. Lean Dion says, the first clip is Rich Homie Quan talking about how I could die at any time. People only paying attention to the artist when they're dead. Okay, we might have some predictive programming here for this recently allegedly deceased rapper. Okay, let's play this clip.
And this shit real life. I can really die at any time. I just be hating how when an artist die or someone dies, it's almost like the culture pays more attention to us when we're dead, and that shit be like, I don't like that, man. That don't be real, man. When you could have been screaming his music or our music while we here. What's the difference? Don't wait till we gone.
Yeah.
And this.
Okay. Seems like he might have been expecting it. Commenter here says, ain't no coincidences, unfortunately. Richie Homie Khan got taken away. They get taken out of the game when you play around in the industry. Yeah, I think it's a scam. It's got to be some kind of a scam. Okay, I got some comments here regarding what we were just talking about. Messianic Charlatan says, doesn't that connect Stavely to MG? Oh yeah, the co-host. Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to see what all these connections are, like when the whole picture is exposed. You know, because this is far from over. This whole MG thing. And it's going to get more interesting, I think, soon. There's a couple of things that we're awaiting, one of them being the doxing of Q. And we are the ones who did it. Conscious Daughter says, I've been watching those channels that claim to be targeted individuals. They claim they're homeless. They ask for donations for food and hotels. Yeah, there's a lot of grift. There's room for it. And there are people who might legitimately be monetizing their paranoia. Like if I was terrified of 5G towers and I talked about it online, yeah, there's an audience for that. I think there are people who have done that. Messianic said, all while that was going on, Stavely called your show the first time and you guys got along great like buds. Yeah, it's kind of strange how many people I've had on as a guest or I've gone onto their shows as a guest and we're best friends for like 24 hours. And then their subs or their handlers get in their ear and then they hate me the next day. Happens a lot. Water Walking says, Industry Hoax will probably make a video about it. Yeah, that's a good channel. Industry Hoax covers a lot of stuff. He gets into, because we're talking about hoaxes or fake deaths and psyops, but he gets into like what's the deeper meaning behind it. Like what's the psychological impact of this artist dying? Are they saying, oh, this person told too much truth, or if you go too far in this area, you become a threat, you get killed. Like they sow a lot of storylines where it's like it's intrigue is what they do. But I think it's kind of tired at this point. It's like I don't know. Faking your death it's just been overdone. It's like a cliche. Like getting swatted. Which right-wing influencer hasn't been swatted a few times? Gavin McGinnis, he's out on a boat somewhere getting a tan, just on vacation, but his followers think he's in jail because he got swatted. Getting arrested is the new thing. Although Tim Pool and company have really upped the ante. Well, Andrew Tate getting arrested. How many right-wingers are right now headed towards, prison or investigations? Tim Pool, though, he's kind of the DOJ, Russia indictments. What's going on there? I'm going to play this clip here. It juxtaposes 1969 Apollo 11 and 2024 Odysseus. So it's referring to the Starliner mission and how we can't see it live. But let me go and play this.
To see these images live, the Apollo 11 landing was
broadcast live. Why now don't we have the technology to see all of this live?
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
So what this video is pointing out is that we had live footage in 1969, and these days we can't get anything live. And here's NASA trying to explain it away.
Issues with file transfers. We did have a number of communications glitches.
Issues with file transfers, communication glitches, gremlins in outer space. I mean, what is their excuse? Why is their whole thing degrading?
We had either forward or return link problems.
Also, during coast in the zero gravity of environment of space,
it's very difficult to transmit on the fly, if you will, and get that all the way back to Earth.
Struggle to get communications.
So what we need to do is we need to take away all of their money and leave them with the bare minimum what they had in 1969. Then we might get something done. Roxy W says, I was gang stalked for a few years. Wherever I parked my car, I'd return to it with the driver's and passenger doors unlocked and left open. I don't think I'm a targeted individual, but I have picked up stalkers, and there's kind of a difference. But I'm also a counter stalker. I'm very interested in people that are very interested in me. I'm like, why? You know, who's behind this person? When MG was stalked, before he was doxxed, he acted entirely differently. In fact, I probably have it bookmarked. I can show you how creepy, like we're talking about stalkers. And I'm pretty sure I have it bookmarked here. I have an email from George News, Marcus Goldfinch, back when he was MG, where he was describing to me how he was proximal to my sister. And he had a photograph of her place of work in Santa Barbara at the time. And he said, and I think he was trying to be creepy, but he had said something about, I am in her life. And she has no idea who I am. I've actually found one of my old blogs. Here it is. I have all this stuff going into the lawsuit, by the way. And I did put in a FOIA request at the FBI for all of my reports to date. Okay, so here's an example. Before we doxed him, before I counter-stalked him, before I revealed who he was doing stuff like this. He said, this photo sent was taken from a park above. It's outside blank in Santa Barbara. I'll show this to her when I see her again. We have a person near her. She has no idea who I am. I'm in her life. And this was in April of 2018. So right before we revealed who he was, he was messaging me under the name The Anonymous Collective. And then later it became The Collective Q. But all of these went into the FBI reports before he was doxxed, before he was stupid enough to reveal personal details. Here's another email from him. I have 3 moles within his small circle that feed me info daily. One of his brothers is on contact with me weekly, too. He would shit a brick if he knew who they were. I'll be at the FEIC with Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan. No one knows we're turning up. Booking was made by a third party. It should be good. Just driving. I'll have more info soon. I intercepted a lot of emails from this individual. For those who don't know, one of the main pieces of evidence in my suit against him is a confession and copies of emails he sent to YouTube where he was explaining to someone how he defrauded me, how he committed fraud. He didn't know he was sending those emails to me, of course, but that's why it's called phishing. Okay, catching up on comments. Flozik says, every time a celebrity dies, the truthers will say it's a sacrifice. Exactly. False flag. King Ravana says, I like the drill rap era. It was truly an era already. 2010, the final fight. Ellie. Boy, throw it up. Now, the drill rap thing had some kind of psyop connections where it was used as a justification. We're talking about a genre of rap where people are making threats to other rappers or something. But I recall at the time there was a story about, what was his name? See if we can find this. Little Jojo, drill rapper in Chicago, where the police were using this genre as an excuse to spy on the social media of high school students. And I recall at this time, there was this rapper, Little Jojo, who was killed. Some believe that he came back as XXX Tentacion, which kind of matches up. XXX later became associated with Parkland in Florida. His death was very questionable. And before he died, he had a video where he mentions, I think it's the Prince, like Machiavelli, and he goes to his own funeral and sees himself in a coffin. Like, it was pretty obvious. Earth Bull says the stream analytics say 198 views, engagement 25 votes, availability in 249 countries. Let me take a look at our numbers really fast here. So we have 22 on Twitter, 2 DLive, 103 on the main YouTube channel. I don't have the specific count for Odyssey. It's usually above 20. And we have another 50 or so on the audio streams, like paranormal.radio, radio.net, TuneIn. So I would estimate we're like 180 so far. Messianic says, stalking your sister like a horror movie is going to ruin his rep forever. Oh, yeah. Some of the emails he sent were kind of pervy. Some of them he sent were a bit racist and sexist. Like, he said some things that were pretty terrible before he was doxxed. So he was kind of like this psychopath who was taunting me, who did, in fact, he sent people to one of our art events to meet me. He sent some psychopaths, paid them to go through. I mean, look, he paid somebody to go on a date with me, basically. And this person accessed my wallet, photographed everything, and sent it to this person and to a lot of other people. A lot of people who were part of the Flat Earth Conference, a lot of these big channels had all received this dossier on me, this folder. And I was like, wow, who got this folder? Who's in his network? And that's why I sent all these emails to the FBI, because I want to know everybody who's involved in this. I want to know who was in my Discord stalking me, because we're talking about criminal charges here that are going to be leveled against this person. This is beyond civil. But yeah, when in addition to stalking family members, he was calling former employers, burning bridges. He did a lot of damage. So it's like there was a point in 2018 where I thought, I could go back, work for DirecTV, still be on the phones all day, have a lot of fun, make a lot more money. I considered walking at one point, but I didn't because of him, because he had burned a couple bridges. I just was realized, okay, this is going to be a problem the rest of my life, so I'm just going to double down. So it's kind of his fault. And shortly after that, we figured out who he was, and when I got that information, he backed off. Well, he sort of backed off. But last year, he actually hacked 5 different social media accounts of mine. He attempted to get into my Kickstarter. He did get into my WordPresses. He has access to one of my Gmails. All this has been reported. AnxG says, what's the origin of MG's animus towards you? I think he was hired. I think he was hired to take out the IPS, because if you look at what he does now, he's with Marco Polo running a smear campaign against Hunter Biden. That's his job. I think he's some kind of a character assassin, you could say, a stalker, hacker, but that's his job apparently, and he told me this. He sent me some emails, and the footer had some address in Washington, D.C., and I looked up the numbers, and I think it was called the Information Awareness. I got some kind of clues here, but he did tell me that he does this for a living, but that destroying me was in his own time, and it was a game to him, that this was all a game. So it's sort of like I'm not really quite sure. Was he hired to do this, or is he just using government resources? Now, he is White House press corps, but he also has some other interesting connections. And I have to go through his emails because he used to brag about training FBI agents because he's a personal trainer, Les Mills certified. He had a gym, I think it was like a franchise in the UAE. His Twitter account, which I had shut down, I kind of regret it because I was going through all his followers. I do have most, like when I'm investigating somebody, I go through all their followers, all their interactions, and I have it all. But I did have his Twitter pulled. But he was being messaged regularly by a lot of celebrities. He's very well known. He was in Fast and Furious as an extra. He was a stunt double for the Red Power Ranger. If you go back to his IMDb, we're talking about somebody who's very connected in the entertainment world. But then he's also connected with people like Joe Rogan, Eddie Bravo, Jack Posobiec, just to name a few. Not to mention the Trumps, that he's a regular at Mar-a-Lago, at Bedminster, at Trump Tower, New York, Trump Tower, Vegas. He was given a key to the White House by Trump, lapel pins by Mike Pence. But I'm not quite sure exactly if he was contracted to shut us down or if he's just doing it because. But I'm not really quite sure. We're going to have to find out. But again, the next big development in this whole case is going to be October the 8th, when Garrett Ziegler has the first day in his trial. He's being sued by Hunter Biden for computer fraud and stalking. Exactly what I'm suing him for. So it's kind of interesting. Hunter Biden and me are suing the same person for the same thing. Only Hunter Biden doesn't know because the person is still a John Doe to him. But the John Doe behind Garrett Ziegler, who handled the computer and its hacking and the distribution of its contents, that person is going to be revealed in discovery. That's why it's going to get interesting, because the discovery process has already been announced. They're going to do it. And as we speak, and remember, we doxed this guy. We said, yeah, he's this New Zealand actor. He doesn't even hide it now. George News just announced that he's going to be in New Zealand out of the reach of the DOJ until after the Biden administration. So he's already hiding because he knows that he's going to be charged with hacking and computer fraud. But when he is revealed, that name is going to show up in a lot of searches. They're going to say, who is Marcus Goldfinch? And they say, well, not only is he best friends with Garrett Ziegler and Marco Polo is his company, but they're going to find out that he's also heavily involved in QAnon and the JFK Jr. mythos. So I'm hoping this all explodes in his face, and he's hiding out in New Zealand because he knows what's coming. He put out this letter where he said that he's not suicidal, and he said there's a group out there that wants to do him harm, and he begs them to think about not perpetuating a cycle of violence. And I'm thinking, what group is he suddenly worried about? I had this coincidence, by the way, a few months ago. I remember I said, I'm going goldfinch hunting. And I sent out the service papers to the service processor, the process server. So the day I sent out my papers to the process server to be served at Marco Polo headquarters, I drove out to the edge of town, and I'm watching the sunset, and there's this there's this barbed wire fence. And as I'm watching there, I get this email, confirmation that Goldfinch had been served at the Marco Polo headquarters. And when I got that confirmation, a goldfinch lands on the barbed wire fence and starts chirping, starts singing. And I'm like, what could this mean? Barbed wire fence, singing. It sort of made me think about maybe some kind of apprehension and perhaps a confessional of some kind, because the evidence is irrefutable. My own case against him, our first date is going to be the 31st of October. And not sure how it's going to go. We're still waiting on an update. Google has been trying to have it dismissed on their end because they think it's just between me and Goldfinch. But Goldfinch had the help of some attorney at YouTube who signed off on it. So we're going to see how it ends up. I'm not sure, but everything that happens with this Hunter Biden case is going to help our case. Okay, let's continue here. This is where it's at. It says Goldfinch sounds like a James Bond villain. And that is a real name. Some people thought it might have been fake. No, I looked it up. In fact, I was going through the genealogy on some website, and I found out his father's name, his father's middle name, which was the secret answer to a password. It was like the a Google password. You have to have like, what's your special code or whatever. And it was like my father's middle name. So I looked it up and I did a deep dive and I found a few things. Like his brother worked for Pat Robertson. You know, Pat Robertson from the 700 Club. Goldfinch's brother was the director of marketing for Pat Robertson. They own yachts. A very, very wealthy family. And what's more, he was part of the board of directors. He was on the board of directors for EAS Myoplex. And it sold in like 2005 or something, 2006, for $320 million. And that's something else he told me. He said that he hasn't had to work since Myoplex sold to Abbott Laboratories. That this was a full-time thing for him, just messing with people online. So that little bit of information had me investigating Abbott Laboratories and who was on the board of directors. And anyway, there's a documentary in progress on this. There's so many threads. How did we get into Goldfinch? Oh, we're talking about stalkers, that's why. There was another stalker who was no longer an issue. His name was Darren, and he was the top Redditor. You know, on Reddit, you have the Reddit conspiracy. The top Redditor with 640,000 followers was one of our stalkers for a long time. And then we figured out who he was, called his place of work, sent them a bunch of pizza, put a picture of a penguin on his front door at 3 a.m. and kicked the door. And I sued him. And I never followed up on it. Like, I once he got the papers, I just kind of let it go, and he backed off. But we've had some pretty high profile stalkers, I have to say. And he was working at some IT company, and I thought that's weird. This guy's working at this company during the day while he's also involved in harassing me online. And I found out who he was through what's called a URL grabber. A URL grabber is basically, I sent him a link, and the link gave away his IP address. I caught him on a night when he was drunk. He probably shouldn't have clicked that link. This is where it's at. It says, Nipsey said it's good to have powerful enemies. Peace be upon him. Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale wrote that she hoped to make the Columbine shooters proud. Yet another connection. All these fake shooters reference one another. So this is not Elle from Stranger Things. This is Audrey Hale. April 99, the year Columbine was born. So she was born. I'm trying to get her birth date here. There's too many ads on the screen. Anyway, she supposedly killed 6 people at Covenant School in Nashville. She planned the massacre months ahead. She said, I don't care if people die as I'm the shooter because I'm going to die too. I'd kill to die. Mass suicide plus death infinite. The journal is full of largely incoherent ramblings, doodles, and descriptions of self-loathing. This is from the New York Post. I'm a little nervous but excited. Can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. You know, I recall reading this thinking it was fake and it was probably created by the feds because she used certain slurs that wouldn't be used. Like, I don't know. I'm going to have to read it. These are all kind of looking these days like ChatGPT. So here's Colt Gray, obsessed with the Parkland massacre. Now, let's just say hypothetically that this was real. Well, then it was inspired by a fake event. They want you to think that these are all real and that these shooters are all like inspired by each other, that these are copycats. But no, they're all part of the same fictional universe as I've been describing. It's not MK Ultra. IFEP73 says trans are the new bowl cut. Absolutely. No, it was one of the more interesting plot twists of the last few years, and we watched this evolve. And again, one of the more interesting facets to this is how these recent shooters correlate with the Netflix, because we're on Planet Netflix at this point. Disney Universe, Planet Netflix, but it's overlapping fictional universes, including the Marvel Universe. Messianic Charlatan says the father of Colt Gray has just been charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, 8 counts of cruelty to children. Olympian Rebecca Cheptegei passes away at 33 after being set on fire by her boyfriend. Now, we have seen a lot of correlation between the Burning Man symbol and the number 33. I'm inclined to think this is hoaxy. I mean, not every death at 33 is fake, but there are certain elements that if they're attached to it, I kind of question it. Like the other day we were talking about that Immaculate Conception Cathedral burning on Labor Day and how it seemed to correlate with the Conception boat that burned a couple Labor Days ago. Like it seems like, okay, this might be some kind of connection here. Immaculate Conception, Virgo, the Virgin, the burning, the immolation. There's some kind of ritualistic overtones here. Something to look forward to. Babylon Bee has a movie called January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day, and they're making a total mockery of it.
Nagasaki, the heat death of the universe. These are some of the deadliest days in history, but none of them compare to the most deadliest day, January 6, 2021. Coming soon in the most epic movie event since Robot Jocks, Left Behind, or maybe even Son of the Mask. The Babylon Bee investigates the darkest day in the history of democracy.
Now, this should be pretty good. It shows you how there was not really anything going on. It was mostly exaggerated. It's a matter of interpretation. It was nothing compared to what BLM was doing. There was no real fire. I mean, it was, to those of us who watched 2020 closely, it was not all that believable. So it's good to see them kind of taking some shots at it. I look forward to seeing this. Obviously, they're not going to go full on auto hoax. They're not going to wooze news it. But that's coming out next month. It's called January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day. Here's some more information about Gray and his father. It says there was a Discord channel linked to the then 13-year-old who had already made threats about a school shooting. So this fits in with the narrative that the FBI knew about him, because they did. This is always the case. The Discord account had a username written in Russian. The translation, Russian. So throw that in, Discord, Russia, like Tim Pool. And the translation of the letters spelled out the name Lanza, the perp of the Sandy Hook shooting. Very nice. Nice piece of work, how they integrate all these various shooters into it. And then he has long hair, so Matt Walsh is like, oh, it's a girl. So they're basically throwing this whole thing in here too, that this is a left-wing kind of radicalized gender ideologue. They have this entire construct to make it scary to the right, who aren't scared of MAGA neo-Nazis with guns. One more thing. This is coming from Trutherville, and this is why we have made it a point to break away from them. We've quarantined from Trutherville. Right now, this is where they're at. Don't drink Coke or Pepsi. There's nanotech inside. So apparently Bill Gates now owns Coke, and he's putting nanobots in the Coke to interact with likely some injectable in the future.
Pepsi and Coca-Cola have now been found to have nanotechnology inside of their sodas. Crazy coincidence. Just so happens that Bill Gates had signed a $1.1 billion 5-year AI contract with Coca-Cola. What the hell does Microsoft have anything to do with Coca-Cola? And you might be saying, oh, everybody's going, AI these days. And no. This has to do with nanotechnology that is permeating the blood-brain barrier, and I'm going to show you. Here it is, the fluorescent nanoparticle studies present in Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola.
So if you're in Trutherville, you walk into a convenience store and everything is scary. All the drinks. You look up at the sky, it's scary. You see the 5G towers, it's scary. I make this point just to say that the red pill filter turns your world into a nightmare. You can't drink the water, you can't breathe the air, you can't enjoy a Coke, you can't watch TV because it's all satanic. Everything is scary. The red pill world is a nightmare, and they think that they're awake. They say, wake up, you blue pillars. So it's alt woke. Wokeism is the leftist extreme version of the blue pill universe, and alt wokeism or trutherism is on the other side. And on the left, they might say, yeah, Coke and Pepsi makes you fat because big corporations don't care, profits over people. And the right fringe is going to say it's nanobots, and it's caused by Bill Gates, therefore government, whereas the left is blaming it on capitalism. So they always agree that everything is dangerous and toxic and the world's ending, but they disagree on the cause because each side blames the other side. This is just standard. Okay, we talked about the drill that was presented as real. If you believe it was real, what's your evidence? Prove it too. Like, you don't have enough information to say you know it was true, so you merely believe. And if you merely believe because you trust the news for some reason, prove it. Donate to their GoFundMe. Send some teddy bears. I want to see evidence that people actually believe the things they claim to believe. I don't see any chemtrailers wearing masks. Nobody's wearing helmets for space junk. Nobody's really, if you think that people are being killed in these events and it's a hoax, or rather it's a false flag, you think that you would be a little more agitated about it. But Trutherville is kind of like almost apathetic at this point. We're not apathetic. The reason why we're not up in arms and triggered is because we know it's not real. Ryler says, it's like in the Matrix movie, Tim. He takes the red pill and wakes up in a nightmare. In the end, it was just another Matrix. Yeah, absolutely. You have Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave, and you figure out, oh, it's all lies. So then you follow the red pills on the floor. There's a trail of them, and it leads you to another cave, and it has alternate shadows on the wall. That's kind of what they have done this entire time. And there's another reason for it as well. It has to do with making the truth something that it's not even palatable anymore. So who wants to wake up? Like, oh, if I wake up, I'm going to look like this guy, crazy, tinfoil hat, scared of everything. So it's not an attractive thing to sell to somebody. Just like wokes. You look at the wokers and you look at hardcore truthers, and they're both agitated. They're both triggered. And people in Normieville may not want the drama, and so they're looked at as apathetic, which they are, relatively. But I don't like the whole pill metaphor. I'm kind of done with pills. It has this idea of like the Socratic method, that you got to spoon feed or drip it, just put out little clues and hints, like you're somehow in charge of waking people up, like you're a Morpheus. Like, I think it's absurd. It contains the idea of dependency. Like, you need to be handed this information. Somebody can dispense it. It's like mind viruses. It removes agency. That's why I also point out that you can't wake people up, that the deprogramming has to happen at the level of individual cognition, and it has to do with observing the argument from authority implicit in the screen that has to be rejected. And people who still think that maybe somebody died at this event, they haven't rejected the authority of the screen over the autonomy of their own mind. They're not arbiters over what they believe. I'll tell you what, alt media, mainstream media can't tell me what to believe. Like, I am totally mind war inoculated. It doesn't get through my BS filter. No benefit of the doubt. They haven't earned it. When have they earned the benefit of your doubt? Never. Quite the contrary, all the time. All right, this is Chief Crow, Auto Hoaxer GTFO. Tomorrow is Infinite Plane Saturn Day, so subscribe. Thanks for all the comments, and we'll have open phones all day tomorrow.